The perfection of the Aeldari was blighted by their pride. They saw their preeminence as being beyond all doubt, and believed the dominance they had secured over the galaxy was theirs by right. Nothing had posed a threat to the Aeldari's existence since time immemorial, and they believed they had nothing left to fear in the universe. This belief, however, would prove to be fatally incorrect. At the peak of the Aeldari's ancient power, nothing was beyond their reach, and no form of exploration or experimentation was forbidden. They asked only if they could, rather than if they should, and their confidence was total. They plied the stars at will and immersed themselves in every wonder and sensation they could find. They created entire worlds dedicated to their pleasures. Such was their dominance that even stars lived and died at their whim. On thousands of lush and verdant worlds, the Aeldari pursued their desires with no thought on their minds besides indulging their every wish, dream, and curiosity. By mastering the webway, their reach extended to the entire galaxy, and they learned much of the universe that has long since been forgotten. Even when an Aeldari died, after a millennia-long life, their spirits dissolved calmly back into the ether for them to later be reborn, thanks to the care of their gods. The warp did not thirst for their souls then as it does today. There were still wars in this time, with young, upstart, inferior races. Most were incredibly short-lived, and the ease at which the Aeldari crushed any opposition only reinforced their belief in their superiority. They knew in their hearts that they reigned supreme, and were convinced that nothing could topple them. The catalyst for the downfall of the Aeldari came not from some alien invader, but from within their own civilization. Their deep, insatiable need to fuel their passions and follow every wish to the extreme. With their society having long provided all the food and resources they needed, and far more besides, the Aeldari could fill each waking moment of their long lives, sating their every whim. Many totally surrendered to all of their most hedonistic impulses, and exotic cults dedicated to countless kinds of sensual excess and esoteric knowledge sprang up across their domains. The older, nobler pursuits were cast aside as dull and overly restrictive. The Aeldari found themselves always looking for more. They sought out every imaginable way to explore the full range of their emotions and senses. All was perilously decadent to a level corrosive to their very souls. The pleasure cults gained a hold over Aeldari society, the acts of their members passing beyond the bounds of even extreme addiction. Millions were totally consumed by their darkest passions and fantasies. The Aeldari culture slipped into anarchy. Some saw what was happening and fled, settling on remote worlds. These exodites reverted to more Puritan ways of life to stave off the spiritual decline that the rest of their race was undergoing. Over time, the hideous lusts of the Aeldari grew to such an extent that the killers and depraved criminals began to stalk the shadows. Torture and murder became avaricious pursuits in their own right, and blood flowed in the streets. Hidden realms within the webway were turned over entirely to the pursuit of sadism and excesses of every kind. Paradise worlds were twisted to the experiencing of the darkest sensations. Fearing impending danger, more Aeldari fled. Many of them embarked upon the gigantic world vessels known as craft worlds. The exodites and craftworlders were few in number, and were only scorned and ridiculed by those of their kin who continued their lives of depravity. With the Aeldari's ceaseless experience of emotional highs and lows, echoes of their agony and ecstasy rippled through the parallel dimension of the warp. Here, thoughts and emotions flow together until they form conscious entities of greater or lesser potency depending on the intensity of the feelings that create them. And so, the corruption of the decadent Aeldari became manifest on a horrifying scale, as the deluge of their raw emotion coalesced into an evil god that grew stronger all the time. The Aeldari were completely oblivious to the fact that they had created a sickening shadow of what they had become in real space. a manifestation of great nobility and pride brought low by shamelessness. As the Aeldari burned worlds and slew and laughed and feasted, the great enemy they had created stirred to wakefulness. It gorged on the dark fodder provided by the depravity of the Aeldari's collective spirit, and became the most perverse and twisted creature ever to exist, the Chaos God Slaanesh. To this day, the Aeldari refuse to speak of its name, instead calling it She Who Thirsts. When Slaanesh burst into existence with a howl of raw power, every Aeldari felt its talons tear at their soul. The god's birth caused a psychic implosion that tore the fabric of the universe. The heart of the old Aeldari Empire was ripped out of existence entirely, leaving a pulsing afterbirth of pure chaos behind it. The epicenter of this apocalypse was a roiling wound in real space that expanded to encapsulate a huge swath of the former Aeldari Empire, a gigantic warp storm that came to be known as the Eye of Terror. Until the emergence of the Great Rift, the Eye of Terror was the largest area in the galaxy where real space and the warp overlap. This horrifying event killed billions of Aeldari, as well as countless other beings, leaving their lifeless husks for thousands of light years around. Some Exodites were not far enough away to escape, and those craftworlds had yet to cover enough distance were also destroyed. Slaanesh consumed the spirits of the fallen Aeldari as they were ripped from their bodies. As She Who Thirsts inhaled these souls, it became intoxicated. It wanted more. It wanted all of them. The Aeldari had created their own nemesis, a chaos god that had developed an insatiable taste for their souls. As they died, their spirits faced eternal torment, for Slaanesh relished in toying with its prey, and it would never rest until it had glutted its appetite in full. From this point onwards, the few surviving Aeldari knew they were doomed. Their race became fragmented into numerous untrusting factions. The focus of most became mere survival in a galaxy where they had become the choice of quarry of malevolent terrors or obstacles to other races that had ascended in power in the vacuum the Aeldari had left behind. The galaxy now teems with these countless other races, while the legions of the Dark God spill from the Great Rift. Yet despite all these dangers, the Aeldari remain defiant and are determined that their race will continue to survive.